Treat me like a game and I will show you how it's played. Her life crumbles whilst mine has never been better. I, a 25-year-old man, was dating my ex-girlfriend. Let's name her Jess, 24 female, for the next 4.5 years. We met at university, where she was a student in my business management class. We were assigned to work together on a large project for the semester, and we simply connected. After we completed the assignment, I asked her out, and she said yes. Those first few years of marriage were pure happiness. We were all smitten with one another and everything simply seemed natural between us. We seldom disagreed and never got into fights, and we talked freely and frankly with each other. I really believed she was the one I would spend the rest of my life with, and I was even saved up to buy her a ring, yet here I am. During the final half year of our relationship, she became aloof and was always making excuses for why we couldn't spend as much time together. We were both fresh out of university and had started working full-time jobs, so I assumed this was usual. It should be noted that we never lived together. But after a while, she began to reject intimacy. For some context, both myself and her had quite strong libidos. We would usually do it at least once a day. I was always using protection, and she was on the pill since neither of us was ready to have children, thank God. We decided to spend the night at her house one night. I attempted to initiate intimacy, but she politely declined. This was starting to irritate me, so I expressed my displeasure to her. She just said that she wasn't feeling comfortable with her body at the moment and requested that I give her some space when it came to initiating intimacy. I agreed, and we went to bed together, or at least she did. I just had a feeling something wasn't right, so I went to spy on her phone after I thought she was sleeping. Yes, I know it's horrible, but I don't regret it one bit, and discovered she was up with her serial cheating ex, 24M. Messages, photographs, and full-fledged movies of them were discovered. The films me up. She was behaving and saying things in those tapes that made me see her as nothing more than a waste of space, and all I could feel at the time was hate for her. I glanced down at her as she slept, and all I could feel was physical disdain. I then took screenshots of all the communications and gave them to me, along with the other photos she sent him, but not the videos, which I couldn't stand sending. I discreetly grabbed whatever possessions I still had at her apartment, drove them to my vehicle, and returned to my apartment. She contacted me in the morning and asked where I was, and I simply gave her a short, credible reason, which she accepted. Here's some background information. Let me now introduce you to one of my close childhood pals, Julia, 21 female. Julia and I were really close throughout our childhood and high school years. My closest friend is her brother, and they live a block away from my parents' house, where I grew up. After roughly a year of dating Jess, I went to my hometown for my cousin's wedding and started hanging out with old acquaintances, including Julia and her brother. That night, she admitted to having emotions for me. I declined her down and told her I already had a girlfriend. She was very kind and apologized, and we didn't really speak much after that since I didn't want to give her any indicators that I was interested in a relationship with her because I was seeing Jess. She was perfectly cool with it and understood it completely. She doesn't use social media, so the only way we'd communicate would be via iMessage. During that period, I snapped a bunch of images of us all hanging out together again. I returned to campus about a week later and showed Jess where I was and who I was with since she was curious about who I hung out with on my vacation. A photo of me and Julia appeared as we were looking through photos. She started to inquire about herself and who she was. I had previously explained to her that she was a childhood friend of mine and that she professed emotions for me during the trip, but I shot her down and gave her the text conversations to back it up, and she appeared to be okay with it. About a year later, during a little dispute, she admitted to me that she was extremely worried about her body and that she became even more anxious after seeing images of Julia, who had a very tiny shape and looked stunning. I tried my best to alleviate her anxieties, but I don't believe she ever got over it. Now, back to the story. I messaged my parents in my hometown and requested if I could stay at their house for the next week, since I had some important things to discuss with them, and they were concerned but agreed. I'd been telling Jess that I was going down to see my parents since I hadn't seen them in a long time and I wanted to pay them a visit, and she hadn't batted an eyelid. I went to work, spoke with my employer, and described the issue to him. I requested for a short break, and he advised me to take as much time as I needed and return when I was ready. I went down there over the weekend and told my parents everything. They were extremely appalled with her conduct and my mother informed me that if I ever brought her back, she would never be permitted to stay at their home again. I assured my mother that I had enough self-esteem to never take her back. I then messaged Julia, asking if we could chat. I went over to her flat after she agreed. I told you all I discovered about Jess. I'm not sure what happened, but I believe everything struck me at that same moment, and I started to weep uncontrollably, not only because I had lost someone I loved, but also because I had spent so much time on her, and I would never get that time back. Throughout my collapse, Julia was there to soothe me. After I calmed down a bit, she brought over some beverages, and we just drank, watched movies, and played Mario Kart till around 2 a.m. We were both very tipsy at this time, to say the least, and I couldn't really go back to my parents' house. She invited me to spend the night, and I accepted. We walked to her room, and before we knew it, we were making out on her bed. She urged me to take out my phone and start filming just before we took off our clothing. As you can expect, we completed the deed many times that night. Julia was saying disparaging things about Jess the whole time we were doing it, such as, "This is so much tighter than that dirty," and other such things. I went to stop filming after our final try, and we went to bed. I awoke the following morning to the fragrance of her cooking breakfast, and we ate together. When I questioned her why she wanted me to film what we did last night, she said that she wanted to assist me in getting some retaliation. I never mentioned seeking vengeance on Jess, but Julia knows me well enough to know that I would want some retaliation simply for how she treated me. She urged me to just email her the audio file from the tape and stop the relationship. She said that she still has emotions for me and that she would wait for me to settle things with Jess. I told her I couldn't make any promises, and she said that was all right. She just wanted me to know. After that, we said our goodbyes, and I returned to my parents' house, where they were concerned about where I had been the night before. I explained that Julia and I were simply catching up. My parents were relieved, but as they prepared for work, my father had a little smile on his face. I guess he knows what I was up to that night. I got to my computer, grabbed the video from my phone, and cut it down to just audio and a dark screen. After that, I spent the remainder of the weekend partying and having fun with my friends, as well as spending a lot of time with Julia, and perhaps having intercourse a few times, no recording. This time, I notified my employer that I would be back to work in approximately a week, and he said it was great, best boss ever. I immediately contacted Jess, informing her that I had discovered she was having an affair with her ex, and including all of the screenshots. My final message to her was, "Treat me like a game, and I'll show you how it's done," and I included an audio clip of me and Julia having before blocking her. I started receiving spam calls and spam texts from a number of our common acquaintances and her family over the following several days. I emailed them all of the screenshots of the text exchanges I had, and it was mostly radio quiet after that. Her parents phoned and apologized for their daughter's actions, and that was the end of it. Where I'm today, almost a year later. I just celebrated my 26th birthday with my family and Julia, my girlfriend of almost a year who is now 22. I just received a promotion at work, and Julia recently moved in with me. She will graduate in little over a week. She transferred over to the university I went to for her final year. I have a consistent training program, and I am currently 5'11", 165 lb. I was always quite slender as a kid. I've never felt more proud of myself, and I've never felt more sincerely cared for as I do now. Now, about my ex, a buddy informed me that after I dropped her, she discovered he was pregnant, and her ex who knocked her up supposedly ghosted her. I couldn't be the father since I never went raw on her. She had an abortion and her life has been a shambles since. She has an alcohol problem, and because to the video I provided her, she now has major body insecurity issues that have wrecked most, if not all, of her relationships. For her, I'm the one who got away, and she's the biggest bullet I've ever avoided. I still loathe her because the 4.5 years we spent together are gone, and I will never be able to reclaim them. But I'm having the time of my life and couldn't be happier. Never settle for someone who does not appreciate you is my one piece of advice to anybody who has been cheated on. The world is your oyster. Go forth and experience it to the fullest.